'Tis the season to cause trouble. So, what I'm going to do today is cause a little bit of trouble. I'm going to do what some would consider to be an advanced spell, i.e. one that has multiple layers. What we're doing today is going to be a binding spell, a triple binding spell, okay? Now, with different people and there are different ways of doing triple binded spells and what free and triple bindings actually mean is going to depend on the person. This triple binding spell is a spell that has 3 distinct layers. The first layer is the one that I've just done. I'm not going to necessarily explain the process of it because it's beyond the comprehension of most beginners, and this is supposed to be a beginner's video. The first binding that I have created is a Saturnian binding. Okay, now it's designed to do really only one thing, and that is to stop any shit coming back at me from the people that this person or people that this binding is going to be for. So this is not a karma thing. This is I am going to be doing magic on actual magical practitioners. So they're going to be able to sense what I'm up to. And they're probably going to want to retaliate potentially. So the first layer of the binding is to prevent that from happening. This layer is also going to go with a simple precaution, and that's that I'm going to wear gloves. Now, with this spell, I'm going to do something a little different than what you tend to see people do. I'm not going to use any of my own energy for this. I'm going to solely use the energies of other things. I'm just going to link them all together. So this isn't going to have my energetic signature on this piece of work. Also, should they manage to get my energetic signature somehow, which is, let's be fair, unlikely, it's going to prevent the Saturnian layer number 1 is going to prevent any retaliation, anything from coming back. If they try to break the spell, if they try to target and push any energy back through the spell, anything like that, this is going to stop it. Now, Saturnian bindings are contract based primarily. This one anyway is a contract based binding. So I could spend 8 hours going through this, but at the end of the day, this is not going to be something that your average person can do. The other layers are, okay? So I'm hoping that no one is going to go away and try to copy this. Not because it's dangerous, but simply because you should be designing your own fucking spells. I'm doing this and explaining a design. I'm not giving you a shopping list like my various items here. I'm showing you the process of how this spell has been designed. Okay, so layer number 1, the Saturnian layer, is only there to prevent retaliation. Okay, that layer happens to be the nice black table that this spell is going to sit on. Okay, another good thing about wearing gloves, like these rubber gloves, is that I can use harmful materials, and obviously I'm not going to get it on my hands, so poisons and that sort of thing. We will see how it goes. Okay, so for our other layer, we're going to be using this. Now, this nice circle represents the world, the physical world, okay? Now, for the most important layer, which is our active layer, okay, because this is a binding, and what we're going to be binding people from is we're going to be binding people the gateway between the physical world and the astral world. Now, why are we doing that? Well, there is an energetic body in the astral world. It happens to be the person's astral body, right? Now, if you sever that connection, the person's going to die. What I'm not talking about is I'm not necessarily talking about 100% severing the connection, but I'm going to be placing a restriction upon that. Okay. And this spell is going to be an interesting one. And I'll go to when I talk about the target or targets, because there may be more than one, in more detail. But the primary thing that we're going to try to do at the moment is the binding first layer to protect us. Second layer is the one that we're going to create now. And its purpose is to stop and restrict the doorway, the energy flow between the astral body and higher energetic bodies, therefore, because obviously it filters down through the astral body. And that's going to cause a load of problems because there are 3 basic forms that people tend to take when they do their magic. Mercurial, Venusian, and lunar. The lunar doorway is what we're going to block. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I've got my little pot of random crap. And we're going to create a spell from that. And the first thing that I need to do is I need to think we need to place that restriction. Now we're going to put that in the form of a barrier. Now this is a triple binding spell, therefore 3 kind of plays a part, right? So I'm going to use a triangle to represent this. So the triangle for me is representing, okay, this restriction we are putting in, okay? So if you have your physical body, and then the next layer is the astral body. So the physical body, the person's psyche, not psychic, psychology, their conscious mind and unconscious mind. Obviously, then you have the conscious mind, then the unconscious mind, and then the astral body, right? So we're going to be placing this restriction between the conscious and the astral, right? This is going to represent that. It's literally a line. And it's going to be a barrier, a block, okay? Now, what we're going to represent in the middle is this is going to be the astral world. So whatever we do with this is going to affect the person's astral body. This is the barrier. And then we have the physical body, the world, obviously, the physical world. So anything here will affect the physical world, the physical body of the person or people. Anything here will represent the astral body. And of course, we have already blocked off. We are creating a block between the two. Now I'm going to put something rather chintzy, which is a nice purpley candle, because people like to associate purple with the astral and all that. So that is going to represent the energy within the astral world. Okay? Astral energy, astral world, physical world. Okay, now I need to create this barrier now, because this chintzy chain that came free from one of our suppliers probably isn't going to do a huge amount. Okay, what I need to do is I need to actually create this barrier. Just putting something symbolic down does fuck all, right? Now, what I'm going to do is with this, because I'm not using my own energy to do this, I'm going to use very basic energies that probably anyone can find. Okay, so you can all experiment with this, which will be very rather fun, won't it? So with the simple energies that I'm going to find, I did want to use salt. Salt of the earth, yeah, physical, tangible. And I do have some salt, obviously, sea salt. Now, I did think about using some of this salt because we use it all the time for spell casting and stuff like that, and we also sell them in these little things in the witchcraft shop. Instead, I want to use this because this was something that I never really intend on using, nor am I probably ever going to be able to sell it or anything like this. This is a bath salt, okay? This is salt mixed with lavender. Yes, smells very lavendery. Now, a lot of people will talk about using the energies and using plant ally spirits and things like that, what they'll do is they'll just dump a load of crap down. Maybe they'll anoint a candle or something like that. That does fuck all, okay? It works from the perspective of it's symbolic, but you're not actually activating any of the energy. That's like kind of putting a load of cookie mix together, but you're not actually putting it in the oven to cook, right? You're just going to be left with cookie mix. Some people like cookie mix and it's delicious, but it ain't a fucking cookie. It's a cookie mix. It's not the full process. Now, with this is already mixed up. It's got an interesting energy about it anyway, because it's lavender mixed with sea salt. So what I'm going to do now is I need to utilize this. Now, in order to utilize ingredients, probably quite a simple way of doing that is you need to do it in a psychic sense. So I'm going to take some of this and I'm going to hold it. What I want to do is I want to activate it. When I work with energies, I like them to get involved. Yes, I do tell them what to do and sometimes negotiate with them, but I want their input. Now, if I just chuck this down, who knows what the fuck's going to happen? Probably not a lot. I'm probably going to be like all of those Facebook and Instagram witches that take pretty pictures of spells, but then the spells don't really actually work. We're trying to do something a bit more complicated than this because we're actually trying to produce a spell that fucking works. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it. This is my preferred basic method for teaching beginners. Is I'm going to hold it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask to meet the energies that are at play here. Now, if I held the sea salt, I would be meeting the energy current of sea salt. Maybe a spirit of some description will come out of that energy, some kind of sentient force, such as with animism is the belief that everything has a soul, everything is alive, right? With this, of course, it's a little different because this is two energies. So technically, I'm not getting salt or lavender in their pure form. I'm potentially meeting both of them. Now, what I tend to get people to do is to hold the object or to hold the thing, whatever it is they're using as an ingredient. And then what I want you to do is I ask them to meet them. Okay, so what I want to do is close my eyes and I'm going to ask to meet the spirit of this thing I'm holding. And I want them to meet them in their environment. Now, there's two reasons for this. One is that if something actually manifests in front of me in my psychic sense, that's something that I can speak to and tangibly communicate with, then that means that I can get this and negotiate and get it to work for me, potentially. Some ceremonial magicians, of course, as you've probably read their grimoires, have a habit of threatening things. I tend not to work with things that don't want to work with me. Now, with this, I'm already getting the sense that I'm actually on a beach. I can see my environment is a beach, and there's one thing to my right and one thing to my left. The thing to my right is a giant rock. The thing to my left is actually a tree. Okay. Now I'm distinctively getting a lavender scent from the tree. Now it's not actually lavender. It's not a lavender bush, or it's not the lavender plant, but it's just a generic looking tree. There's nothing else on the beach apart from this big rock, which happens to be is an off-white color. Okay, so it's not very pure and that, but I'm getting that. I can distinctly tell that these are representing the two energies. This is the form in which my brain is interpreting them. I don't have a conscious choice in this. It's just the way that my unconscious mind is trying to understand the energies that are flowing through, because I can feel the presence, I feel their presence. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them, I'm going to explain what I want to do. Because a lot of these things, trees, herbs, rocks, people think of them as not really alive. Actually, they are the crystallizations of bigger things. Now, you can move and talk and all that sort of thing. We tend to think of you as conscious, you know, even the somewhat unconscious ones. But actually, there are greater energies that are anchored or have little anchors or hooks in this world, and they might not manifest in a way that we believe to be intelligent, but actually they're not really interested in being here, but they have a placement, a hook, a tendril, something like that here. Now with this, what I'm trying to get to do is I'm trying to get the greater spirit to assist. The greater spirit of lavender, the greater spirit of the salt of the earth, all quite physical things. They have a domain in the physical world because they're physical things that belong here. And I'm wanting to use their energy. And I'm wanting them to supply the energy for this barrier. And because they both exist in the astral and they both exist very solid and physical, they are obviously in both places because anything that's physical is in the astral. But also there's an intelligence there and an energy flow there. So what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to add this to my spell. And they're pretty much, I've worked with these things before, so it's not like I'm going to have to spend a huge amount of time negotiating or talking to them. In very fact, I can already tell that they already know exactly what's going on and what I've come to do, because the nature of that is that this exists on a slightly different time scale. So on the beach, things, spirits, energies I've worked with before, they're jumping at the chance to cause the sort of magic that I'm wanting to do, because they're more than capable of doing that. Okay, so what I want is I want the barrier. I want to create a barrier. It's going to stop the person or people that I'm casting this spell on, this binding, to stop and restrict their astral. Now, it's interesting that I've obviously got salt because of salt of the earth, and then lavender as a kind of calming thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a little bit of it down here, like that, okay? And I'm going to take the rest. Now, I don't really need to energize this. I have, in my mind still, I can see, I can practically taste, in fact, them. So I don't need to pick up loads of salt and start putting it down. I'm linked. I can feel the presence of this energy. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to pour this on the line. Okay, so we're going to understand that they are going to be the ones that supply the power for this spell. So we're creating, some would say, a salt line and salt barrier, which is kind of true. It's just not one for the physical world. It's one between the physical and the astral world. So this is my salt and lavender, and those two will be working as a team for what I want them to do. Here we go. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit because I like to be clean. We understand the representation, what this is supposed to represent. This is supposed to represent the boundary that I am, with the help of these spirits and this energy, creating. Now, this is not going to deplete my energy at all, because I'm not really using any of my energy. All I'm doing is essentially getting things to do my dirty work for me, which is something that I quite like to do. Now, remember, in the middle here, we have the astral representation, astral energy. Within here, we have the physical world. We have the boundary of the table, which is also applied to a certain extent, which is why I did this layer first, the filter for this video. Okay, because we don't want too many people interfering with this, even though I don't plan on releasing this until the end of December, when we see what manifests out of this spell. Okay, so our physical barrier. Now, within this physical barrier, now I need to talk about the energies, or the people, I should say. I shouldn't call them energies because it's rude. The people that I'm going to be working on, because this binding spell, I'm actually doing on multiple people. Okay, now, these multiple people don't know each other. They're not a coven or anything like that. They're different people. Okay, now, to a certain extent, this is going to be a little bit of a fun experiment, because I've chosen to do magic on these various different people, and it doesn't really need to be a binding spell. I'm placing a binding spell because I'm a professional witch and I have a lot of clients and work to be done at this time of year. So rather than doing for these 3 different targets, 3 different spells, why don't I just combine it all together and just do one spell that will target all 3 of them? Okay. The binding spell I've decided to choose primarily because I have 3 targets. Target number 1, we have ceremonial magician. Now, with our ceremonial magician, likes to think of himself as somewhat adept, somewhat advanced. Now, the reason I'm casting on him is A, because I think he's a prick, but also, this is a bloody basic ass spell, right? If he is as good as he thinks he is, he should have no problem whatsoever breaking this spell. If he can't, then obviously he ain't quite as good as he thinks he is, because this is a test. I'm going to see whether he's going to be able to do anything about this spell and what it manifests with a so-say advanced magical practitioner. Now, I haven't consecrated this puppet. What I've done is I've consecrated something inside the puppet, because I don't necessarily want, even though there is a Saturnian filter to this video, I don't want people looking onto this specific person, unless it is that person. Hello, if you're watching, if you're still alive. So I'm putting the thing that's actually consecrated within the doll, within the puppet, which kind of looks cool as well for the video. And let's be fair, this is going on social media, so we might as well make it look cool. Now, I'm going to give this one a placeholder, okay? Because we've got a couple of people going on. So I'm going to call him the King of Spades, okay? King of Spades. The King of Spades, ceremonial magician, he happens to be a man. Our next target is a witch who works professionally. Happens to be someone that I know. Okay? Now this person, I think that they can maybe push themselves a little bit further. I do have a habit of people which I know that essentially ask, or I'm aware that if they need a little nudge, they can accomplish great things. This person, they really need to get the ball rolling a little bit. This is a professional witch. Now it's going to be very interesting because this is one spell. So if any of these individuals break the spell, it will break the spell for all of them. So it was quite interesting here. We're going to call her the Queen of Diamonds. It's a lady, a witch, someone that does magic professionally. Therefore, you should expect a basic spell like this for it to be fairly easy for them to break it. You should expect the ceremonial magician that thinks he's God's gift to whatever to be able to break it. But what we also have is we have a mundane. And the mundane is just someone that someone asked me to kill off. So really the mundane here, the only reason I'm putting the mundane in is because I will probably end up targeting the mundane eventually anyway. But I thought it would be fun to compare and contrast her, Queen of Spades. We have a mundane, we have a witch with experience, and we have a so-called advanced magical practitioner, all being bound by the same spell. Okay. Now, the important thing here to remember is that if even one of them breaks the spell, it breaks the spell for all of them. Also, this energy that I'm putting in, I'm not feeding it. Okay. So I'm not really putting a lot of effort in. This is just the spirit allies of energies that a lot of these practitioners probably interact with on a daily or weekly basis. Now, with this, what's important here is that I don't want them to be able to interact with each other. Now, when you work on multiple people in one spell, what has a tendency to happen is that they can be aware of each other's presence. And I want to prevent that. So in order to do that, I've decided to use another friend. My other friend happens to be obsidian. Now these barriers, or this big barrier, I'm going to separate out. Now obsidian is something that I do use quite a lot. Now even just picking it up, because I've used it quite a lot, I'm getting the nattering of it telling me how it's to be used. Okay, I'm not deciding necessarily. I know that I wanted to use it and I had some ideas as to how I'd use it because I want it to help with this barrier, but it's telling me specifically how it wants to be used. So I'm getting black mirror, I'm getting Saturnian energy channel, and obviously the logical thing to do is, because I'm trying to separate these out, is that what I'm going to do is actually asking me to activate it. So I'm going to activate it with some Saturnian energy. And I'm placing these in the corners. Now this is a triple binding spell. We have triangle, we have 3 boundaries, 3 lines, we have 3 puppets, 3 people, which you don't have to do. You could do this just on 1 person. And we also have 3 obsidians, which to me are black mirrors. Okay, so what I'm wanting to do is any attempt to cross through this boundary in either direction, to sense more, to understand those extra energies, I'm keeping them apart, and I'm keeping them apart with Saturnian energy that is channeled through obsidian crystals. The obsidian crystals themselves told me that that's how they want to be worked. And it's going to be in the form of a black mirror. Now, how they perceive this is going to be quite interesting, because I know I'm in talks with at least one of them, because I see this person on a regular basis. So I will be keeping up to date. I'll also be doing a little bit of magical spying on the situation, but no doubt I'll get some feedback, and it'll be interesting to see if they do see a black mirror. Now, with the boundary here, the way I've displayed and put these puppets on is that we have the physical world, the astral world, the barrier between the physical world and the astral world, which has been separated now, okay, cut off. And for ethical reasons, I don't want, hence why I've used Saturnian energy, hence why I've tied it to the actual Saturnian table, or the Saturnian energy from the hourglass. This happens to be a magical object. What I'm doing here is I don't want these people working on each other. That would be, for me, unethical. I don't care about the mundane, because the mundane's supposed to die in it anyway. This is just a fun little experiment. Call it toying with your food. The Queen of Diamonds I do care about. Queen of Diamonds is important. Queen of Diamonds isn't supposed to get hurt beyond how the pain that obviously this person's supposed to go through and try and figure out how to break the spell, obviously. But I certainly don't want the magical practitioners sensing each other, teaming up with each other, or thinking that, say, he thinks she or she is the target. Okay, so I am literally breaking that connection there with the Saturnian crystals, obsidian crystals channeling the Saturnian energy. Now, the interesting point here, and the important bit, is that this is one spell. Okay, it's not 3 different spells now. It is one energy flow. So if he breaks it or she breaks it, then it will break all of them. Another thing is that the absorption of the soul. Okay, because I'm expecting, obviously, for at least those 2 to fight it. She's probably going to fight it subconsciously or unconsciously. Or she's a mundane, so she can't do fuck all. But they're going to be fighting it. And what is going to be great is the energy that they're going to be used to break this barrier. The salt is going to absorb and reinforce the barrier. So think of 2 people trying to get through a door. The door is in the middle, 2 people trying to get through the door. One's on one side, one's on the other. That one's smashing at the door, that one's smashing at the door. They're both not going to open the door, and they're both going to be essentially keeping the other person at bay. I.e., when that person's crashing the door and that person crashing the door, they're actually really going to be crashing into each other. Now, I'm not relying on this to be the full extent of the barrier, because obviously the energies that I'm using with the lavender and the salt, they are going to be the ones supplying the energy to create this barrier. But as the individuals try to take down that barrier and use energy to take down that barrier, whether it be some kind of astral meditation spell or anything like that, it's going to be absorbed, and it's just going to reinforce the barrier. It's going to be very interesting to see if they try to assault the barrier in any way, shape or form, whether it's just going to strengthen the barrier in total, or whether it's going to have kind of a rebound effect. So when one person targets it, the boundary just grows or gets stronger or pushes the others back. It'll be quite interesting. I'm thinking it's going to be like the two people with the door pushing at each other and not really getting anywhere. Okay. Now remember, astral world, physical world. Now with the astral world, all I care about is them not getting into the astral world. Okay, now the astral body needs to be connected with the physical body. When that wanes, the astral body becomes tired. So physically tired, well, it's not physical, but obviously energetically tired. That link is severed. It's like a river or stream drying up. It's not completely dried, because this barrier shouldn't be that good. It might end up doing quite a lot of damage to the mundane, but we'll have to see. And at the end of the day, we don't care about the mundane anyway. But it shouldn't restrict it completely. I'm going to keep an eye on things, because obviously I don't really want these two to die. So Queen of Diamonds, King of Spades, I don't want to die. So I am going to make sure that I keep a close eye on it. So this is going to be set up over the next month, because we're at the beginning of December at the moment, as it's going to be set up. Now here in the physical world is where I'm going to do our next section, our next layer. We have our protective layer for ourselves, happens to be here. This tied to the hourglass, tied to Saturn. We have the astral barrier between the astral world and the physical world. But we also have the physical world. Now with this binding, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to probably make it so that it's quite difficult, okay? Because they're magical practitioners, so they're going to try and break this. And this isn't a particularly sophisticated binding at the end of the day. It's just lavender and salt working together and then firing back energy or absorbing it to create a barrier, right? But what I want to do is fuck with the people's physical psyche, okay, and their physical world. Now I'm going to do that in an unusual way, okay? I'm going to overstimulate them. And the reason you would think that is an unusual thing is because if I'm stimulating them, I'm giving them energy. But if you overstimulate, then it does cause problems in the physical world, because they're going to struggle potentially with sleep. They're going to have an abundance of energy, but they're not necessarily going to be able to lock on to what's going on. So the aim of the third layer, physical world layer, is to create confusion, okay, and make it so that even if they did try to do basic spells, they're probably going to mess them all up. It's going to interfere with their physical, their conscious mind, and it will also probably interfere with their physical bodies, physical environment, for the simple reason that if I'm working the energy, it's going to be filtering out through their aura. So it's going to be like sweating it out. So it's going to sweat into their energy, their body, their psyche, confusion. Maybe they might go a little crazy. Hopefully, might be quite interesting. But also it will probably bottle up and stay in their environment. So it will also be interesting to see whether other people, like the mundane and that, whether people in their environment pick up on it, okay? Or whether if they just stay stagnant in one place, whether that energy fills up with that. So people, animals are normally the first ones to sense things like that, psychics and people. So it's normally kind of the animals and the psychics, and then it's the mundanes. So the mundanes should pick it up. But I'll be keeping a little eye to see what quite goes on with this, because I'm going to be interested to see, because they're all individuals, aren't they? So they're all different people, therefore it's going to affect them in different ways. Now, the overstimulation, I'm going to use an old friend. I'm going to use black coffee, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing that I did with the salt. Okay, so with this layer, the confusion layer, I'm wanting overstimulation. Now, I am extremely susceptible to caffeine. Okay, I struggle with caffeine. If I have a cup of tea, it past 4 o'clock, I won't sleep. Okay, I'm really bad with caffeine. I don't really drink tea or coffee or anything like that. So with this is one of the reasons why it springs to mind, and I've used this for that kind of caffeine high, that kind of jittery bug, that kind of jittery, which is what I want them to feel. Now, if they use caffeine, which I think the mundane does, from what I'm told, the mundane likes to have a bunch of cup of teas a day. So that caffeine's actually going to be in their body. They obviously drink tea, and the tea is going to have an even worse effect with them, I would imagine, because it's actually in their physical body as well. So not only is it filtering through energetically, but they also have it inside their body, which will be working against them. So with this, obviously, I'm doing the same thing, which is in my mind's eye and trying to tune in psychically. I want to meet this tea, okay? Which I am getting a shape that's liquid, but it's 3-dimensional. So I'm not getting like a stain or a spill on the floor. I'm actually getting, I don't know what you would call it, almost like a jelly type thing. It's not of the consistency of jelly, but it's a jelly type thing. And it doesn't actually talk to me, but what it does is it kind of it reorganizes itself to make different shapes and concepts and symbols and stuff like that. Again, this is something that I've worked with quite a lot, so I'm used to the language that it presents itself to me. Now, I know that I want overstimulation with this, so that is exactly what I'm going to ask it to do, is I'm asking it to overstimulate the people. Now I'm going to take that, I'm going to put that back in, and I'm going to put this around the edge of the physical world. Okay. Don't know why I don't just move it. It's easier to move it in like this. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, because I'm tying, when you do spell work like this, you're actually just tying the energies together. So it doesn't need to look perfect or look pretty, nor do you have to really worry about where you're putting it. If I wanted to, I could take, better not put that there, had I? If I wanted to, I could just take all of this and chuck it in a bag. Okay, or I could just put it all in a box or something like that. I'm displaying this out because I like to work logically, and I like my work to look logical. And obviously I'm explaining it in the form of a video, so it makes sense that you can actually see the layers than just a bunch of crap just chucked. Okay, now with that, the stimulation. Obviously you probably won't be able to feel it because there is a slight filter on this, but I can immediately actually feel, because I'm in the physical world also, this already activating, this stimulation. In fact, I feel quite stimulated myself, which is great. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use any of it because I'm not going to be putting my own energy into this. I'm not going to cheat. Now, another little friend of mine, which is actually something I don't think that many people are aware of, is that there are some stimulants that you can use, like caffeine, that will make you awake, keep you staying awake and stuff like that. People make tinctures out of nettle that will literally stop you from sleeping, I think, like fucking 2-3 days in a row, from what I've told by herbalists. So I can't resist having a little bit of nettle and taking a little bit of nettle here. Now it works herbal medicine wise. I believe it is the nettle seeds that they'll make the tincture out of, but I've got dried nettle, So I'm going to be using the spirit of nettle, obviously, which means I'm going to be doing the same thing I normally do and always do with this. I'm going to take a nice big amount like that. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that amount that I've taken out. So I'm going to do the same thing. And immediately I'm actually taken to a place that I know very well that stinging nettles grow. And it's in summertime, funnily enough. I'm down by the river. So it's this stinging nettle patch that actually stung me as a child. And the more you work with these sorts of energies, the more you'll find them accommodating. I rarely ever, in fact, I can't even remember the last time I got stung by stinging nettles. And I'm one of those people that goes foraging and that in shorts. I pick stinging nettles. If I really tried to get stung by a stinging nettle, yes, I could get stung by a stinging nettle. But like I've said in other occasions, you would be surprised with if it's energies that you work with quite a lot. They do kind of, to a certain extent, become loyal to you. Now, with this stinging nettle, I'm not wanting it to be a painful, because they often equate this with Mars and martial and destruction map. What I'm wanting is I am wanting that prickly, annoying sense. So stinging nettles aren't hugely painful, but they're bloody annoying. And that's what I want the stinging nettle to do. I want it to be an annoying stimulant to work with the tea. Okay. Now, I didn't mix the nettle and the tea together in a jar or anything like that. I'm just using these individually. So I'm going to ask it, and I'm going to put a little bit together and see if this actually feels like they'll work together, because I always like to ask. I always like to get the feeling. I don't just chuck ingredients together hoping that they'll agree with each other. I actually like to feel like dating, right? And this is a match. I have used them together before, but I'm still seeing for the purposes of this video and explaining. But this is going to be a match, and I think they're going to work quite well because they're going to both work in a very similar way. It's just that the caffeine isn't going to have the stinging, annoying sensation that the nettle will. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to sprinkle it around the place, on the edge, on that boundary. And again, it's not hugely important because I've given it a job. People will be worried when you get something like this and you put it in there because it's not supposed to be there. It's going on in the astral body and that. No, I have programmed them to have their individual jobs. This is just for us physically to look at. The energy there is such that it doesn't really matter. I'm a little bit anal and I'm going to be annoyed by having that there. But in terms of the energy and affecting the energy, it's not realistically going to do anything. Right. So putting the lid back on this. Now, I've talked about confusion. Okay, now this is stimulating. And I am hoping that at least this one realizes that there is an abundance of energy here within the spell that they might be able to channel and use to their own advantage. I really like for the person who I want to win, the person I want to break the spell, the Queen of Diamonds, I really would like for that person to pull the energy in from this, because there's an abundance of energy there, and use that to break the boundary, because you're using the energy of your own, of a spell that's cast on you against itself, which, you know, that's the sort of thing which I find quite amusing, okay? Now, the confusion. Where does the confusion come in? Well, the ceremonial magician and the witch, both psychic ability, right? Mundane, not so much. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume, because we're fucking with their conscious mind and their unconscious mind. So I'm going to make that a little unstable in the form of flooding it with ridiculous energies. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take a bunch of neo-pagan tat and shit. For those that know, we do the scratch testing. We often give boxes like this full of random stuff that has energies with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cause confusion by adding to this physical world layer a bunch of random crap. Now, I've got a couple of plant allies and things like that, but I'm not going to activate them. I'm not going to get them to do anything. I'm literally just going to pop them down in the physical world. And I'm going to see if any of them kind of pick up on them. Now, I could ask them to do jobs and I can activate them, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to activate any of the energies that are put into Confuse. I'm not going to give them a task. They're going to be present and they're going to be lingering about, but they ain't going to realistically be doing anything. I've got a couple of other things. I've got a little bit of amethyst, so I'm just going to chuck a bit of amethyst down. Now again, remember we're tying the energies together and to a certain extent giving them uses. Now, there is no boundary in the physical world here. I know there's kind of rocks and stuff like that, but in terms of if I put this over here, it doesn't mean that this person isn't gonna be affected by that energy. I'm just putting it there because I like the symmetry of it. Okay, I'm going to take some other things. I'll chuck a bit of rose quartz and that down. I am going to also take, what else can I have? A little bit of neo-pagan crap. Oh, of course. Random coins that have got various essences, tokens and stuff like that. We'll just chuck a bit of that down. Going to be confusing. If you're trying to read this in a logical fashion, possibly not going to... Oh, we've got a bottle top. Don't know where that came from. All of this, quite good. Here we go. Chuck it all down. What else have we got? Oh, obviously I've got to put some keys in because keys, locks, bindings, that's just hilarious, isn't it? I'll stick that. I really want to put an extra layer onto this, but I'm not going to because otherwise it wouldn't be a triple binding. And let's be fair, if you're going on 4 levels, then that's just overkill. What else do we have? Some kind of spanner. He's a tool, so I think I'll put that near him. Quite amusing. Oh, sharp tough. All of this sort of stuff. I also have, because I've been doing something else as well, and I was producing a magical oil that I'm trying to recreate other people's chintzy oils from their other shops, because people just do a really terrible job with magical oils and things like that. Again, most of them just chuck it all together without actually doing it. We've got a little bit of star anise. I wonder if what it will do. If I was to guess, because most of the time when I use that, it's kind of that, you know, a new age shop, and you know when it's full of new age people, you get that kind of yucky new agey energy. For me, that's very much star anise, so I'm going to chuck that down. I don't want it to necessarily do that, but let's just see what the fuck it does. And of course, another chintzy thing, we have rosebuds, because we might as well just chuck a little bit of happy, loving energy in, because that'll confuse the fuck out of them. So there we go. We have our triple binding spell. Now, this hasn't yet been 100% activated, because notice there's a candle in the middle. Okay. Now, obviously, when we direct energy, we're kind of using it and directing the energy in the astral, and then it all filters down. So if I go over the basic concept of this and what's going to happen, what I'm going to do is I am going to channel, and I'm not going to put the energy in, I'm going to kind of, almost like if you were to drill through the bowels of a ship and let water in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use that. I'm going to light this little purpley candle, and I'm going to rip a tiny little hole between the astral and this spell. And when I do that, it's almost like uploading something to the internet. All of this is going to be activated. That's the final little connection in the circuit, and it's all going to go up. So I can alter things. It's not technically activated yet. As soon as I do that, and I'm using a flame, because let's be fair, a flame is kind of there, but at the same time it's not, which I love the symbology of that. And also, I don't want the astral world and all that to be tied to this permanently. This is kind of an upload spell. So with this, I'm just going to leave it to burn down. And when it's burnt down, all of this should technically be set up in the astral. So we'll have a look and we'll have a see. I'll see if I can speak to the the Queen of Diamonds and see if she gets anything from this. Because I'm doing this on a Saturday. But what I'm going to do is this chintzy oil is actually supposed to be a lunar oil. Okay. Now, it's not really a recipe which I particularly think is great. But I thought, you know, I'm doing this thing soon where I'm recreating other people's spells and stuff like that and putting my take on them. But obviously, in order to do that, I need to recreate their spells. So I'm going to put a little bit of the lunar oil. And I'm just going to put it on. Actually, I put it on there? No, fuck it. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to actually do is I'm going to pop it on each of the dolls. Because if it's lunar oil and it's a shitty recipe that I don't agree with, nor particularly like, it's not really something that I'd be too particularly proud to work. It's like going to one of those crappy metaphysical shops and buying one of their oils, you know, or powders or something like that. But I am interested to see, because it should retain an energy technically, because I didn't charge it either. Like in the instructions, it didn't give you, oh yes, charge it now. It was just combine this, and this, which was a load of crap. But what do you expect from fucking Llewellyn? Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to activate it. Yay, I do love an activation. Now, as I activate it, I'll explain the process of what's happening. So we're going to activate it by lighting this candle. Now, remember, the only thing that's technically already working is the Saturnian Binding from the physical table that protects me. Okay. All of the contracts and agreements have been made with the spirits of the energies that I'm using for the primary spell. Obviously, the confusing, crappy energies that just retain a little bit of charge, I'm not really focused on that. But at the same time, probably it would work better if I did just chuck them down like I have. Because if I gave them tasks and tried to energize them, this spell would all of a sudden, even though it's quite structured, it would become possibly structured enough to read quicker. And that's what we don't really want. So with this, what we've got is we've got the astral barrier. So there is now a barrier that is going in place between these people's minds, physical bodies, and their astral bodies. And that is going to be manifesting in probably quite weird ways. So I would imagine with the magical practitioners, they are more than likely going to have problems with spell casting. They are, if they're going to try and astral travel, they're not really going to be able to, or they're going to struggle to, until this spell takes effect, when they probably won't be able to at all. And then obviously the confusion and jittery nature is going to set in the physical world. Okay. And there we go. Now, obviously the puppets aren't consecrated, but the things in the puppets are consecrated. So I did that because that looks fucking cool, don't they? Little puppets and that. They look like a little coven, don't they? Hence why I've put them, because I don't want them all joining forces. But at the end of the day, this isn't designed to be a particularly powerful spell. Obviously, I wouldn't go about doing this on my enemies because, well, I would reserve a slightly more powerful magic for that. This is pretty much very simple, okay? I've given a couple of spirits of physical things, specific tasks to do, but this is like a team. They're all working together. They all have their jobs. Yeah? So this is going to be really great. I can't wait to see how this manifests. I have my favourite. Who do you think is going to be the first to break the spell? If it kills the mundane, then that's even better, because then I am got to do a spell afterwards. And technically speaking, it could quite easily do that, because like I said, severing the connection between the astral body and the physical body, most people's connections are weak anyway. But there is a connection there, hence they're alive. But if you do restrict an already restricted weak connection, then that's potentially going to kill them, or they might get, well, it can manifest in quite a lot of ways, to be honest with you. Possibly hemorrhage, maybe a hemorrhage. It depends on how powerful it is, to be honest with you, this barrier, and how strong the barrier is. But at the end of the day, hence with the salt, the more these two break against the barrier, the more stronger the barrier is realistically going to be. And it's going to be quite interesting. But there we go. So this is it. I don't want to make this video too long, because it's already long enough as it is. And I will probably revisit this on one of the No Holds Barred occult ramblings that I do for the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon on tier 2 and tier 3. I might talk about this in a little bit more detail. But again, I will probably do that near the end of December, because this spell I will probably keep going for December, because we're at the beginning at the moment. So what I'd quite like to do is limit it and just cut the spell, probably maybe New Year's Day, because that's a Saturday. So it's nice that we're doing it, starting it on a Saturday, and then we'll end it on a Saturday potentially. But I'm hoping that one of these people will break the spell before then. Like I said, I'm not doing this necessarily on enemies. I'm doing this as an experiment to see how a simple spell like this affects 2 magical practitioners and a mundane, and comparing and contrasting the outcomes. Because it should affect the mundane the worst. At the same time, these two should probably break this by the end of the day. In fact, technically, if they were that good, they would have counteracted it before it even happened. But we probably shouldn't go into temporal mechanics now. But there we go.